Greetings and welcome to the first of 4 sessions of the meditation course. I'm Tanya, I'll be your guide through these sessions, and we are L'Emergence, the Brahma Kumaris Raj Yoga Meditation Center here in Montreal. So that's a mouthful, and perhaps for those of you who are joining our activities here for the first time, I can tell you a little bit about who we are. So the Brahma Kumaris is an international organization with its roots, its beginnings in India, northern India. It was founded in the mid-1930s. And we, L'Emergence, the Meditation Center, we are affiliated with this international organization, which has grown from very humble beginnings to having over 9,000 centers in over 100 countries. And we offer all kinds of activities that promote well-being, promote living to one's fullest potential, and we do this at all levels of society. And we believe that if we want to see global change, that needs to start at the individual level, at the most fundamental level of human consciousness. And so, in fact, that's what we'll be looking at this evening. A meditation, a fashion or a way of meditating that impacts the quality of human consciousness. My consciousness and yours. So let's begin. Well, first of all, before we go any further, I'd highly recommend, if you haven't already, if you have something that you can write on. You may want to take a few notes. So I'm going to give you a moment to go and get something, and or onto your iPhone or your tablet, whatever, but it's good to have something so that if you want to make a few notes as we go through this course. So as we're doing that, I can also mention that I've been doing this practice now for just over 20 years. And even before that, I started doing a practice called Pilates, which some of you may be familiar with. And why I mention it is because what I find is the dynamics that govern healthy movement have a lot in common with the dynamics that govern a healthy being. And this is going to be very important because what we understand is if we want to impact consciousness, we have to explore the spiritual. Because consciousness is a spiritual energy. Every human being is composed of 2 elements. A physical body, which can be seen, it's visible, and a spiritual being, which cannot be seen through physical means. And so we have a human body, a spiritual being, you put the 2 together, and you have a human being. Our issue, and what often affects the quality of our lives, is the quality of our actions. And what in fact affects the quality of our actions is the quality of our thinking. And what determines the quality of our thinking is the quality of that consciousness. And that consciousness is itself that spiritual being. As I mentioned, consciousness is a spiritual energy. It is something that the being both has and is. I am a spiritual being, an energy of consciousness, and I sit in this vehicle that is my body. And just that awareness can change everything. It's a game changer. So, as I mentioned earlier, I like to play with this relationship between the dynamics governing healthy movement and the dynamics governing healthy consciousness. Because one is visible and one isn't. So although, as I mentioned, we cannot see that consciousness that I am, we can know it, we can understand it, and we can experience it. And so when I practice meditation, this particular meditation, which is in fact an entry point into the larger practice that we do, which is called Raj Yoga. And so when I practice this meditation, which is simply thinking, to meditate is to think, but a very specific kind of thinking. When I engage in this, I can take myself, using the vehicle of those thoughts, into an experience of the being that I am, because I've disconnected from that. And so in that title that I mentioned of what this practice is called, Raj Yoga, yoga means union. I need to reconnect or unite again with that awareness of myself as a spiritual being. That is the foundation for wellness on the spiritual level. And how I often like to look at it in terms of the body and the being, we know that if I want to improve the movements or the movement of this body, the way I move this body, I do that the most efficiently and effectively by simply correcting the alignment of it. And as is the alignment for the body, if it's quality alignment, there'll be quality movement, so is the awareness for the being. And so if I want to elevate the quality of that consciousness that I am, I need to switch the awareness that I have. And the awareness that I have of me. How I think and feel about myself. How I identify and define who I am and what I am. And so, as I mentioned, I want to move away from this idea that I'm this body, I'm what I see when I look in the mirror, to what I truly am, which is this invisible energy that sits in this body and animates it, gives it life, and makes it move. Everything that we think of as life, from the subtle aspect of thoughts right up to actions and interactions with others, it all is generated and starts from this source that is the consciousness. So consciousness, as I mentioned, is very subtle. It's invisible. But there are indicators of the quality of it. And some of those, the most subtle of those, is the thinking. So if I want to know where am I at right now with the quality of my consciousness, you could say the wellness of my consciousness, I look at my thoughts. What kind of thoughts am I generating? So perhaps what we can do is we can look at what kinds of thoughts in general we would be generating at any given moment. There are 4 kinds of thoughts. So you might want to write this down. These are thoughts, or these are kinds of thoughts that I think we're all very familiar with. Negative thoughts, positive thoughts. So those 2 are pretty clear, pretty obvious. Negative thoughts usually lead to a negative outcome. They can cause harm. They can actually cause illness. And they can destroy and harm our relationships. And, of course, then the quality of life. Positive thoughts, complete opposite. They give benefit. They lead to a high quality of action and interaction. They make us feel good. That's almost the most immediate indicator that I'm generating positive thoughts, is there will be a good feeling. Negative thoughts, there won't be that good feeling. It'll be quite the opposite. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Then there are 2 other kinds of thoughts. There's what we call necessary thoughts. And necessary thoughts can actually turn into negative or positive thoughts based on how I feel about what I'm thinking. A necessary thought, an example, would be, oh, I better start making dinner now. It's 7 o'clock. Or actually, probably it'd be better to eat a little earlier, so hopefully I started making dinner earlier. But I might think, yes, it's 7 o'clock. Oh my gosh, I'm late. I need to get dinner done. And it turns into something altogether different than just a thought to act. So that's a necessary thought. And then there's the category of thoughts that probably constitutes the bulk of our thinking. Any ideas of what that might be? I won't keep you in suspense. They're what we call waste thinking, or unnecessary thoughts, perhaps is a better way of saying it. But they're thoughts that lead to no outcome. There's no result from them. And actually, it's like we're burning energy uselessly. Sometimes we call it useless thinking. These thoughts, I think we're very familiar with. Worry, thoughts of regret, thoughts of fear, thoughts that do not generate anything that is useful. And so we put a lot of energy, because thinking requires energy. And if there isn't a good outcome, if there's no outcome, then we're using that energy uselessly. And so if this is the bulk of our thinking, and by the way, a number that is often associated with the quantity of thoughts we think in a day can be between 10 to 40,000 thoughts, and all requiring an output of energy. And what keeps us from depleting completely is when we get back a good experience, a good outcome. Now, we don't want to necessarily focus on the outcome. We don't want to be externally driven in what we do. We don't want to sit and just manipulate, try and police our thoughts to try and have that good outcome, because quite frankly, impossible. If I'm generating 10,000 thoughts a day, even just 10,000, those thoughts are happening pretty fast. And a lot of them I'm not even aware of, because we have something called habitual patterns of thinking. And often those habitual patterns are the hamster in the wheel thinking, where I'm thinking and nothing's happening. I'm not generating anything useful. And so rather than focus on the thinking, that's the indicator of what's going on at the level of the source of those thoughts, of consciousness itself. And so if I want to change the quality of my thinking, I need to change the quality of my consciousness. But as I mentioned, thinking is a good indicator to tell me, where am I? How am I positioned internally? Now, let's go back a little bit to the body, because I'd like to now take us into a bit of an experience. And it can be a bit tricky just diving in to try to position my consciousness differently, because it's very subtle. It's hard to get a hold of and do something with it. But the body is more clear and obvious. So what I'd like to look at right now is to have an experience of what happens when I change the alignment of my body. So although, and I'll just mention this, although there is no physical component per se to the practice of Raj Yoga and the meditation within this practice, how I sit is going to be driven by me, the being. And that is the connection. So am I guiding my body to sit in such a way that is going to be giving me, the being, a feeling of taking care of my body properly? Or is there a feeling of neglect more, or even abuse of the body? So we're going to look at this at the physical level, because as I mentioned, alignment for the body is like awareness for the soul. So we're going to look at alignment and see what happens just by simply changing the alignment. So one of the indicators that tells us that the body is in a good place, alignment-wise, is the quality of the breath. And interestingly, the quality of the breath will also, in a moment when we look at the being, become an indicator for that as well. So it's like the breath becomes this wonderful meeting place of the body being in a great place and also the being being properly positioned. So as you sit in the chair, or wherever you are, I'm assuming most of you are sitting, I want you to take your awareness to your body and to the breath. And I want you to observe, where is that breath happening? What is the experience of that breath in the body? Your awareness is an energy, it's a capacity, a power that emerges from the being. Awareness is not generated by any part of this body, even the brain. It is a spiritual energy generated by the spiritual being. And so I now use that natural capacity of awareness to observe. So I, the being, am observing with the power of my awareness, where is the breath in my body? Now, depending on how the alignment is, you may feel that breath mostly in your belly. For a lot of us, that's probably where we feel it. There might be a little movement higher up, and it might be very restricted, very limited. So let's see if we can enhance that a little bit, upgrade the quality of the alignment and therefore the breath. So I want you to imagine that you've got strings attached to your knees. And with the power of your awareness, you're going to hold those strings with your awareness. But before we do anything with those strings, you're just holding the strings. So you've got them with your mind. You're envisioning them with your mind, holding them with your mind, which is a function of that consciousness. And now with your consciousness, while you're holding those strings, we're really getting that consciousness working right now, you're going to very slowly start to rock your rib cage or roll your rib cage up the back of the chair until you feel your shoulder blades resting against the back of the chair. So take your time to do that. Listen to your body, don't force it, just gently move it to that position. Start to pull up on those strings. And as you do, you'll feel the body do two things. Start to engage the muscles that support the lower back and pelvis, and liberate and open and free up the rib cage. And you'll probably start to feel the breath now moving the diaphragm and lower ribs and upwards into the chest. And it will be a little bit freer and more open, a little fuller, but very easy and natural. Now, sometimes there can be restrictions to that, because if for a very long time, and we're going to let all of that go now and maybe collapse back down again, this is an element that's also very important for understanding what's happened to the being. If the body has been held in a certain alignment for a long time, we develop patterns of movement, patterns of use, patterns of how we breathe, and we're not even aware of it. And when the body is sort of collapsed, there's no activation, especially in the lower back and in the pelvis, and the rib cage is pretty much closed and collapsed, the quality of breath is very, very poor. And that actually creates stress in the body. Yeah, it's like the body's in a state of distress all the time because there's all this pressure on the organs in the chest, and also the breath is very limited. And we can live and function like this all our lives. And yet it does have cumulative effect and ultimately can cause damage on the body. So let's again, with the power of our awareness, grab hold of those imaginary strings, rock the ribcage up, pull gently on those strings. The feet stay on the ground, but they get lighter. And feel the pelvis perhaps shift to create a slight arch in the lower back. And the whole time your consciousness is observing this. And so we're also preparing the consciousness to start to observe itself by using it powerfully and actively in this way. So again, none of this is part of the meditation or practice of Raj Yoga, but I like to use it as a preparation. because our consciousness can often be quite weak and limited when it comes to observing and connecting with that which is very subtle. So we're focusing on something a little more gross in a very active way. We're using our consciousness actively to assist the body into a higher quality of alignment that supports the part of the body that needs that support, the lower back and pelvis, and liberates and opens and frees the part of the body that supports breath and life in this body. So these are two elements that are as important for the body as they are for the being: strength, power, and liberation. So this practice that we're doing right now for the body has a similar aspect or dynamic in this practice we're going to do for the being, this practice of Raj Yoga. We're going to liberate and empower, but it will all be happening in this tiny, subtle energy that is me, the spiritual being. Now, I want you to maintain the position of the bones of your body with the power of your consciousness. Just have that very gentle will. I will now keep this alignment. I've kind of recorded it, and I'm going to maintain it as I release those strings gradually so my feet settle back down, heavy into the floor, and I feel my shoulder blades sinking into the back of the chair. And now there's perhaps a state of wellness or well-being in the body. It's an interesting expression, well-being in the body, but the being has helped to make the body more well. So now, this aspect of alignment, you can see the indicator that the breath has improved. The quality of the breath has improved for the functions of the body, especially the internal organs and everything else. And so now just observe that, enjoy that. So now that we've got the body properly aligned, let's see if we can help the awareness, the consciousness of the being. So now we need to know some things, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit now to this practice of Raj Yoga. I mentioned that meditation is in fact an entry point or a necessary element, one of the elements necessary for the practice of Raj Yoga. Raj Yoga, we sometimes refer to it, we often refer to it, in fact, as a study that has 4 subjects. You may want to write these down. So the first is knowledge. We need information. We need knowledge to understand that which we've perhaps become completely disconnected from, or we might be quite ignorant of. So just as we need some knowledge of what is the proper alignment, and we need a method of how to create that proper alignment. If I just said to you, breathe better, sit up straighter, who knows what you would have done? And you might have done it in a way which actually would not have supported a better quality of alignment and wellness in the body. You might have just sort of thrown your shoulders back and, we tend to do it in a very violent way, rather than a way that uses the natural innate capacities of the body. So we want to do the same for the being. So first we need knowledge, we need information, we need to know how. And then we need the actual meditation. So that's part of the how as well. The what is it we want to do? And then the next step is the meditation, the method. How am I going to get myself into alignment? What will I be doing? What will create that state of liberation and empowerment? When those two things come together, the know-how and the how, or the know and the how, know-how, and we implement them, the result will be kind of those indicators. There'll be breath, there'll be life. And those indicators we'll start to put it into practice. Yeah, we'll be able to see that in our behavior, in the quality of our actions and interactions. And this is the 4th subject. It's putting this state that we've arrived in into practice. So I'm here, I'm sitting in alignment, the body, I shouldn't say I, but my body is now aligned. Very important to be accurate. I'm the being, this is my body. Very separate. If I lift my arms in this alignment, it's quite easy and it feels very comfortable. Now, if I were to sink back down, you can do this with me, into perhaps where we tend to be, and I lift my arms, there's tension in the neck. And actually it starts to create more compression. The ribs fall more, they create more compression. Now, we don't have to lift our arms up here, but where are our arms often? They're here. They're here. And just holding something with the body like this is going to create so much tension. And tension is the enemy for both the body and movement and the being and that life, that expression, that energy. And so we want to avoid that tension. And the best way to do that is to change the alignment. Tension is like noise. It's like that waste thinking. Yeah, it's just using the capacities of the muscles to contract against the body. And so it's like if I use my mental energy against myself with all that waste, I just create this sort of this noise and this agitation, this tension in the mind, in the being. So let's again get out of this place and pull up on those imaginary strings, the shoulder blades against the back of the chair. And you'll notice you can do the two things at the same time. And then just let the feet sink back down, even a little bit of weight into the feet, at the heels especially, to kind of help that activation and that liberation, power and freedom. Now, let the feet relax, keeping that alignment. Let's go back to those 4 subjects, because you may have noticed I only gave you 3. So there's the know, there's the how, and doing that how. The natural result will be the putting into practice, but it's often not so automatic. Because what often happens, as soon as we come into action, we can lose the alignment because we have patterns connected to activity. Patterns of activity in the body. So as soon as I'm at the computer and I'm working, and depending on how I feel about it, I start to collapse. I'm holding my device, I look down, I collapse. Because of these patterns, even though we know the alignment, we've practiced it, as soon as we go into action, we start to lose it, unless we pay attention. So attention is going to be a key element in that. If the putting into practice happens, that leads to the 4th subject, and that is giving benefit. We call it service, but basically it gives benefit. So just by aligning, knowing how to, knowing about the alignment, doing the alignment, maintaining it while I'm in action, just as I'm moving, this will reinforce strength and freedom. And there will be this benefit for the body in the activities that I do. Same for the being. If I know what is the proper position I need to have of that consciousness, of that awareness, if I know how to get myself into that position, and then I maintain it as I start to think and speak and express and come into action and interaction with others, perhaps especially interaction with others, if I can maintain that positioning, automatically there will be benefit. I will serve myself, I will benefit myself, and I will benefit others, because I will bring the best, I will enrich, if you will, I will upgrade the quality of my actions, of my activity, be at the level of thoughts or come out there completely at the level of action. So just as aligning, I increase the quality of movement available to me, so with positioning the being, I can upgrade the quality of expression of that being, from the most subtle of thoughts, of attitude, of vision, to more gross or more obvious of words and actions and interactions. So, are we ready now to look at those 4 areas when it comes to the being. All right, so we're going to, again, use it as an indicator the breath, but we're going to add to that the quality of my vision and the quality of where I feel thoughts are happening. So the quality, if you will, that atmosphere in the mind. And you could say the thoughts, but also the feelings, how it will feel. What we often what I often look for is when my quality, when the consciousness is accurately positioned, when I've generated a good positioning and quality of consciousness, I will find that very naturally there's these pure feelings in the mind. Pure feelings that generate pure thoughts. Very, very elevated thinking. And then I find, of course, that then that can lead to quality interaction. And also, even just the vision, the energy of how I'm seeing, how I feel about what I'm seeing will transform, will become very, very high quality as well. And a word we use for that energy of seeing, of sight, is drishti. Perhaps some of you that have a yoga background will recognize that word. And so drishti just means vision or seeing. And so, it can have both negative and positive connotation. But usually in the way we use it, it means a spiritual seeing with a spiritual awareness. So I've kind of given it in a way, the awareness we want to have of the self to upgrade the quality of the consciousness that I am is a spiritual one. So this comes back to that foundation of this practice. I need to use my thoughts, generate the thought, based on the knowledge that I'm not this body, I'm not physical, but I'm the spiritual being sitting in this body, giving life to this body. So with that understanding, with that knowledge, and generating that thought, and knowing as well that I'm a spiritual being, but where I sit in this body, I can very naturally position myself in such a way that I upgrade the quality of that consciousness that I'm generating, that I am and that I have, that I generate. You can think of that like I, the being, I'm like a tiny star. I'm a point of energy. That's why I can't be seen. I'm not physical. So if I'm not physical, I can't take up physical space. And so what would be the smallest or the most discrete way I could describe is a point, meaning I know where I am. I'm in energy, and I sit where would make the most sense. I sit in the driver's seat of this body. I sit here, in the center of the forehead, seeing out through the eyes. I'm this being of consciousness. And just by having that thought, knowing where, and positioning my own energy of consciousness, attention there. My attention, it's an energy, and it gives life. Energy flows wherever I focus my awareness. So it gets a little tricky because it's kind of the same words. I have awareness, I use that awareness, I want to shift my awareness, I am that awareness. And so, yes, perhaps if I just use the word consciousness when I want to talk about the being, and awareness when I want to talk about that energy that I'm generating and I'm using to make things happen. So I, this being of consciousness, this spiritual being, I'm using the power that I have of awareness and putting my attention with that awareness here where I sit, focusing my own energy on myself. When I position myself, it's as if I have properly aligned myself. I've put myself and I've become present to myself where I truly am.
And so this aspect of truth is a key ingredient. Truth is powerful, and it is natural, it is innate. The truth of something, if you will, the pure essence of it, is what is natural to it. And so it is not something I have to manufacture, but it belongs to me. So just as this alignment, now this is what's interesting, and this will help us understand why we need to make effort. Well, if this is my truth, if I am the spiritual being, what's the problem? The problem is if that awareness is not actually being sustained, everything falls apart. So yes, there's this true alignment, and if I'm there, everything is fine. The problem is I don't stay there. Yes, I am this spiritual being and I sit here, but the problem is I don't have that awareness of myself most of the time, perhaps never. And so that's what lowers the quality of the output of that consciousness that I am. Because, and this is what we're going to explore in the next session, so hopefully you're going to be intrigued and want to come back to find out what is getting in the way. What is influencing it? Well, just as I have these habits that I've created that take me out of that alignment when I start to use my body, so the habits that have come from performing actions when I wasn't in the right awareness, and what I mean by that, when I did not identify myself as the spiritual being sitting here. Now, if I was to ask, have you been living your life as a spiritual being sitting here, knowing this and experiencing yourself as this? If the answer is no, that has had a huge impact on the quality of your actions. And, through a course of a lifetime, that's a lot of habits that we've created. I remember a client that I had, because I teach Pilates, not just practice it. And she used to often come, every time I saw her, she's like, oh, my shoulder. And I go, well, what's going on? She says, oh, it's bad habits. It's bad habits. It's like, but if you know what the habits are, because we've talked about them and explained them every single time she comes, why is that still happening? Because as soon as she goes into action, she forgets about the alignment that will help to keep her shoulder well. And so she starts using her body in the wrong way, and that affects the joints. That affects the entire body when this alignment is not maintained. And so in the same way, if I have not been living my life present, not just present, but present as what? As who? As a spiritual being sitting on the seat, the throne of the forehead. And I say throne because this is called Raj Yoga. Connecting again to a sense of self that makes me once again the ruler or the master, the king. Raj means king. And so when I sit here, it's as if I'm sitting on a throne, and very naturally there'll be a state of mastery from that position. I will share that, and perhaps some of my clients out there, if they happen to see this or they're watching, I have sometimes, without saying why, taken them into this awareness, just saying, put your awareness here, just focus your attention here. And you know what the result is? Immediate upgrade of their capacity to manage and move their body. Better awareness, better capacity to align, to know what they're doing, to do it properly, immediately, without even knowing, but just this position and putting my awareness here, putting my energy here, and letting that energy awaken and nurture the being that I am that's sitting there is powerful. And so this is the foundation of this meditation, is to start to nurture, to generate with the knowledge, to generate a sense of myself, an experience of myself as the being that sits here, and not all the other ways I can identify myself. Be it, and here's now another perhaps 4 things you want to write down. Call these the 4 P's. Makes it easy. Yeah, 4 P's. If you're trying to remember, they start with P. I could be identifying myself as what I see when I look in the mirror. The package, the body. I could be identifying myself based on the people in my life, the relationships. I am such and such relative to so and so. So the people, second P. Third P, possessions, what I have, my stuff. I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm this, that, and the other. And of course, the final P, the position, what I do, what kind of status. And I always think about Facebook now with that, my status. But the way that I'm seen through what I do and how people are perceiving me, the position that I hold. And these 4 Ps, they're not bad in and of themselves. I mean, the body is not bad. We need a body. How can we do anything without one? People are great. I mean, we're here to be in relationship with others. People are not the problem either. Possessions, I mean, you try living without a roof over your head and food on your table. We need possessions. But of course, how am I in relationship to those things? And then the position. A position can be a means to do good, to benefit many through the work we do, through, our position in the community, etc. But it's again, am I identifying myself with those things? And most importantly, why that matters is, am I defining my sense of value based on those 4 things? Because the one thing we can say about those 4 things is they are not going to remain constant. We have no control over them. When things are going well with the 4 Ps, my sense of value. When things are not going well with the 4 Ps, relationships falling apart, problems in our relationships, body is not well, lost my job, don't have the money I need to buy what I need. My car, I got in a car accident, my car got smashed. When things happen to those 4 Ps, sense of value drops, sense of wellness, a sense of quality of life. We often define our quality of life on those 4 Ps, when in fact, I am the source of the quality of my life. And that's the only place I have control on who am I, how am I defining myself. And so I didn't do this with the 4 kinds of thoughts, but I'm going to go back there and we're going to throw in a 5th kind of thought. So remember, the 4 were positive, negative, useless, waste, unnecessary, and necessary. Okay, I was giving you a chance to perhaps guess, although you could probably look at what you wrote down. Adding a 5th point. Oops, I just said it, what it is. A 5th P is, I broke the suspense here, but the 5th P is pure. Pure thinking. And pure thinking is thoughts coming from or derived from spiritual truths. So a pure thought I would have is, I'm a soul, or I'm a being. I'm the spiritual being sitting here. That would be a pure thought. It's a thought based on this spiritual truth. This is who I am. And that would then have the power to position me here. And when I position myself here, the result is an experience of value. Because I unlock capacities in the self. I unlock a sense of stability, power, compassion, love. The beauty within the self is accessed simply by positioning myself here. Automatically, I upgrade, I enrich the quality of the self and then of what I do. And so that 5th P, or 5th kind of thinking. I'm confusing myself here going back and forth. So now going back to those 4 Ps, I want to add a 5th P, and I actually said it earlier, but that 5th P is point? Do I define myself with those 4 other P's, or do I define myself with that point of conscious living energy, the spiritual being that I am sitting here? It can seem like such a simple thing. How can that do everything? Well, just this simple act of aligning changes everything for the body. It is a game changer. If I want to change the quality of a movement that someone is performing instantly, I address the alignment. It's not do what you're doing harder, faster, whatever, because if it's wrong, it's wrong. And it becomes wrong when this truth for the body, the alignment, is not right. Actions that I perform, thoughts even that I'm having, become lower level, lower quality when this truth is not present. This true awareness, identification of the self. And so in this meditation, the foundation is I practice putting my attention here and accessing an experience of myself as that being. And I will experience it in the quality of the feelings in the mind, those pure feelings, in the quality of the energy of sight, the drishti. And you can think of that energy just in front of the eyes, like the light shining or the energy radiating from the being who is seeing through those eyes. And the quality of the breath that, again, I, the being, am generating in this body, which is the foundation of movement and of life for this body. So the energy of the thinking, the feeling, the vision, and the breath changes, upgrades with that shift of consciousness. Sometimes we'll call it turning on the switch, a switch of awareness. I, the soul, I just function better when I'm turned on rather than turned off. And so the simple way to turn myself on, to turn on that switch, is to position myself where I sit. And so we're going to do that right now as we come to near the end of this first session, so that you can start to practice this in the week ahead before we meet again next week. So take a moment and just ensure that your body hasn't again collapsed in the chair, which it might have. I actually have this huge big space back here, so sometimes putting a pillow back there can help. It can't take a place of aligning and positioning the bones or activating the muscles through positioning the bones, but it can help make it a little bit less challenging. So in that proper alignment of the body, so now the body isn't going to pull my attention because it's now alive and happy. I'm now going to take my attention, my awareness from the breath, and I'm going to move it upwards to where my eyes are. So there's really the feeling that I'm now looking out through those eyes. And I want to see if I can become aware, as if I want to make my consciousness, refine it enough so I become so light, like a light touch with my awareness of the energy just in front of my eyes, my drishti, that output of the spiritual being, radiating from the spiritual being. And what that will do is we'll start to center the energy of my awareness. Center it and concentrate it. And allow me to very easily become present, my awareness, in the center of my forehead, on that throne of the forehead, where I, the spiritual being, sit in this body. And my whole focus is to simply sustain my attention there, willing myself very lightly, very gently, but firmly, to hold my attention in that energy of sight in my drishti, to concentrate and center my awareness on where I sit in this body. And so it's this wonderful capacity I have. I am this consciousness, generating this awareness, which I'm now using to experience, to see, feel myself, to have an experience of myself, which is really always the objective of meditation. Using thoughts, specific thoughts, and in this instance, pure thoughts, to drive myself to an experience. And in this, an experience of who and what I truly am. And what I will experience, as I continue to hold the attention there very lightly but firmly, is I might start to experience a shift in the quality of that energy that is radiating out through my eyes, of the quality of that drishti, the quality of the feelings in the mind, becoming very, very light, very sweet, calm. The sense of there being peace, power, and compassion in the feelings in the mind, in the energy of the drishti. And then one third place is start to integrate in the quality of the breath. In fact, positioning myself here with the help of kind of helping my body get to this alignment, that will actually have a big impact on the quality of the breath. Why? Because when I position myself here, I am sitting now where I need to function optimally. Driving a car works best when you're sitting in the driver's seat. To try and do that from anywhere else is going to be a very scary, nerve-wracking, tension-creating experience. It's called a nightmare. And so to operate, to perform actions, to engage in my life from anywhere but the driver's seat automatically creates tension. And that tension will emerge in the ribs, in limiting the quality of the breath. Even if I properly align my body, it will never create and generate the quality of breath that sitting myself here can do. Because it has a natural capacity to let go, to release. I let go. I don't have to hold on anymore because I'm sitting in the seat of natural mastery, where I am the Raj of my subtle faculties and activity at the level of thought, feeling, vision, attitude, and at a more gross level of words and actions and interactions. So this is the foundation of this practice of Raj Yoga, using this simple tool of meditation, using the pure thoughts, thinking, pure thoughts, to position myself where very naturally and easily I will upgrade my functioning, my activity, my expression. And as I become upgraded, so does the quality of my life. It is that simple. But yes, there are a few other things. And we'll be exploring those next week because, just as I mentioned, we've developed patterns of movement that we fall back into. Even knowing the right alignment, we can fall back into those patterns of movement. So we fall back into patterns of being, of identifying. We get influenced and pulled out of our seat, out of that consciousness, when we're interacting, when we're using stuff, when we're at work, all of these 4 Ps, rather than them being the medium through which I can express my quality, they tend to become very much an influence and pull me away from that position of quality. And so I need to know how I can address that and how I can avoid that. How can I help my body we'll look at that as a means to understand a bit more how I can help the being that I am. So as mentioned again, I will underline it. There is no physical component that is a part of the practice of this meditation, or of this meditation is part of the practice of Raj Yoga. But rather, I am using it as a means to be able to see and understand, hopefully, a bit more easily, these subtle dynamics that are not visible in the being. So hopefully that has been an enlightening experience for you, been helpful. Hope it's clear and you have a sense of what you might want to explore in the coming week, that you want to practice positioning yourself here in the way that we did that, bringing your attention, your awareness, maybe starting it by doing it with your body, so you're using the power of your awareness in a very practical, very obvious way that has immediate return, and then bringing it upwards, moving it to that seat where you sit. But I find that if you position it in the energy of sight in front of the eyes, just have that intention, I'm going there, to get here, where I sit, and then sustaining it. Just as if I sustain the body in this position and breathe, I'm exercising this body. I'm reinforcing the muscles and the everything that is going to support this alignment. Same thing, holding my awareness here, gently but firmly, with the understanding, I am the one sitting here, the being. I'm going to reinforce this proper awareness, this, if you will, spiritual alignment. I'm going to strengthen it, make it more powerful, and upgrade what I then express. So I thank you for joining us this evening, joining me this evening, and hopefully we'll see you again next week. I do want to mention that like all other Raj Yoga, Brahma Kumaris Raj Yoga centers around the world, we are a center that normally we invite people to come into the center, but now all our activities are online as we, are operating within the current environment situation worldwide. But we still have to function as a center. We do all of our activities free, not just when they're online, but even when people physically come to the centers, we offer all of our activities free of charge, in that we understand that this is knowledge and a practice that is not ours. And in fact, we couldn't put a price on it, but it belongs to every human soul on this planet. And so we make it available freely, but of course, contributions are most welcome. And so even though we aren't functioning physically in this space, we do invite you, if you would like, you are most welcome to contribute to continuing our activities. And the information will be made available to you, or is perhaps appearing already on your screen, of how you can do that. And so thank you in advance for that. And again, thank you for being here, and look forward to connecting with you next week. Practice, enjoy, be free and powerful. Experience fully the peace, the power, and the compassion of the spiritual being seated on the throne of the forehead of the body. Om Shanti. And these words mean who I am. I am a being of peace. Take care.